Okay.
So
Peter
is telling us, he says, listen,
you have to let this go heart deep.
As you defend these things, it's not just easy knowledge that you can roll off this map that we've had a lot of fun working through and talking about.
But it's got to
go to a heart level.
In your
heart, regard Christ the Lord as holy.
So our topic we're going to be getting in tonight is going to be at a heart level as well as intellectual, but it's not just regurgitating information. It's got to actually mean something to us. And Peter tells us that, okay, so you got to make a defense, all right? And the way that we do apologetics, remember, apologetics, the word means a well-reasoned defense. We might defend Christianity. We might defend Christianity as a whole, as a biblical worldview, or the existence of God, a particular aspect of the nature of God. Maybe it's defending the historical Jesus, or that he was really raised from the dead. It might be a theological teaching from that we're saved through him alone. The Bible is reliable. It's God's word. It's for our life. It's helpful. All these things, as you navigate through this, we're able to get to all of the information, but you do run into some potholes in each one of those. So, for example, we talked about with Jesus. If you stay on evidence for Jesus, you're going to run into, did miracles really happen? You're saying that the resurrection is the likely best explanation of all the evidence for what happened in his life. Then how do we really know that miracles happen? Because miracles mean something otherworldly, something supernatural. Well, if somebody's a naturalist and they believe that this world is all that there is, this universe is all there is, and there's nothing otherworldly to it, they're not going to believe a miracle even if they saw it. So they have to come up with a naturalistic explanation, which is what people do with the resurrection of Jesus. Like, well, maybe he was mostly dead, or maybe they went to a different tomb, or all of these different things. Maybe they hallucinated. A lot of different arguing points from there. Or maybe the story of Jesus is just a legend developed over time. So you might have had this historical man, and he was fascinating, and people just kept adding to his story as you went along, and eventually you got this resurrected Messiah. And that looks a lot like these dying and rising gods in other religions. However, he doesn't match up with those at all. He stands out uniquely. So those are potholes that you face along the way, and each one of them is you stay on evidence for the Bible. The potholes that we run across is canonicity. Somebody's going to say, hold on now, wasn't it just like a bunch of like religious leaders, maybe like 100 years down the road, 200 years down the road, and they decided which books were going to the Bible? Well, the short response to that is they didn't determine which books were authoritative. They recognized the books as authoritative. That was the thing. They're like, no, these books have a divine stamp of inspiration, which is why we go through. It has fulfilled prophecy, not just prophecy. So you work through those, and those books stand out differently. You can also talk about manuscripts. We get all this information. 56, 5,800 manuscripts and all these different variants. So those are potholes. One that we really didn't get to because you guys decided to go to Jamboree instead last week was discussing potholes if you were to stay on strictly just evidence for God. The ones that we come across with that, one of them is evil, pain, and suffering. So how is it that you can have this all-powerful, all-loving, all-good God and have natural evils that happen? So a tornado comes through and rips apart a house, somebody even dies in that. What about sicknesses? We've had a lot that have happened here at Dalraida very recently, with all the deaths that have happened, with the tragedies that have gone on with that. And so how is it you can have this loving God that allows these things to happen, maybe even does them? As I read the Bible, maybe he takes somebody's life, may damn a bayou, or maybe he destroys the world like you see in Genesis 6 with the flood. What do we do with that? That merits its own response. But another pothole you may come across is, and by the way, if you want to know more on each one of these, of course there is more. Nate did a fantastic lesson for us on a Sunday night. I can get that clip for you. But he also did a couple other series on evil, pain, and suffering. So if you want to know more about it, I can give you some evidence for it. Another thing might be what we call the Canaanite genocide. How's in the Old Testament that God commanded things like destroy all of Jericho, including the men and the women and the children? It seems like an abhorrent command. Like how could he say that if he's all good and all loving? But also, how could somebody follow him if he makes that kind of command? And so that merits a response as well, right? And that's one that we haven't been able to spend a lot of time on. But I want you to store that in there because of where we're going with our discussion tonight. And the third pothole you come across, if you're going to stay strictly on evidence for God, is why does God seem so distant? He seems so far away. In fact, that's one that I've struggled with a lot. I can work through the evidence for the resurrection. I can talk about the historical Jesus. I can talk about the reliability of the Bible. At the end of the day, I can tell you that I believe that God exists. But I struggled mightily
believing that God is my Father, who loves me and cares for me and is there and hears my prayers and answers them. Knowing my background, as many of you do, had a father that was absent in my life. And so how did God look different than my absent father? At times God seemed so distant. He seemed so far away. It'd been nice if he would have, stuck his head out and said, Billy, you are my son. I appreciate you following me. You're doing what's good. I'm proud of you. I want to hear that phrase from my father here on this earth. I want to hear, I'm proud of you. And that would have gone a long ways had God said, I'm proud of you, Billy. That would have meant a lot to me in my faith, and I struggled with that. I was sitting in your seat in college, wanting to throw my hands up and say, it's not that I disbelieve. It wasn't about disbelief at all. It was just about, I don't know if I want to serve this God that seems so far away. And what ends up happening, so as you go through this evidence, you study these things, and I think knowing many of you on a very personal level is times that maybe you will struggle is what we call times of doubt. And that's what I want to focus more on tonight. Is being able to address doubt when it comes. So let me ask you this question: What is doubt? If you're going to give a definition in a religious context, an apologetic context, how would you define doubt? Okay. Question. All right. Questioning things. Two aspects. Questioning things and not fully trusting. Now, I think this is interesting. When you read the Psalms, do you find David and the other psalmists questioning God? Yes. A lot of questions toward him. Now, I want to use this as scaffolding. I know what you're saying. I want to work with it as well. Is questioning God wrong? I think the Psalms, as well as many other places, tell us if we're supposed to be in a relationship with God, He is our Father, and we're supposed to let our requests be known to Him. Questions are going to happen. God, where were you when this happened? Now, the answer may be, we might come to this conclusion, He may lead us down a path in the sense of He's always been there, but just because He's there and has the power to do something doesn't mean that He needs to do something in that moment. So we have to kind of change our angle on life anyways. But He's been there the whole time, especially if we got all the evidence to know that God is real. But sometimes we may question, it's like, God, why is it that the evil people seem like everything's going well for them? You ever felt that way? People that are just don't go to church, don't read their Bible, and I mean just vile. Think of some vile people and their language and their actions, and you think, but man, they've got a good job. They're not a great person, but they got a family. And you look at they got money. It seems good education. You ever thought that about somebody? It's like, how can you have somebody so evil have good things happen to them? And then have you ever had somebody that's just really good? I mean, just solid gold of a personality, attitude. And it's like everywhere they turn, it seems like they just run into a roadblock and they hit something. Health complications. It's something simple, but car breaks down. They don't have finances to be able to take care of it, and the job that they had, they could have paid for it, that they just lost their job, and now they're trying to find another one. They can't get another one because their health complications are hitting them. It's like you go all the way down the road, and so you talk about one scenario over here, but it just changed. How could that happen to such a good person? You ever thought that? You ever seen it? I have. Have you been on the receiving end? Those kind of questions though are what generate potentially doubt. That's questioning God, but it's the trust part that I want to narrow in on. Questioning God is a part of the relationship. I mean, if you get to know somebody, you're going to ask questions like, "Hey, why did you do that? Hey, where were you? I thought you said you were going to meet me at this time. I thought you said you'd always be there for me, but then you just disappeared. What happened? We do that with our friends, don't we? Our families sometimes we ask questions about each other. We're trying to discover God and know more about Him. We're going to ask questions. But are we asking questions to the point of understanding, so we can trust? Or are we trying to get to the point of justifying our disobedience? And I think that's where the questions differ. And you know this. There's a different way of asking questions that you're trying to get out of something versus trying to get into something. If you're inquisitive, you're trying to get into a conclusion. It's like, okay, God, where were you when these things happened? All right. Why did you not reach down and why did you not do this? I want to understand so that I can trust you. But I could ask those same exact questions in a way to try and undermine God. I think that's the difference in our approach.
All right, so
I think you're onto something about questions and trust.
What else would
you add to that, maybe definitionally, or just to be able to give us an example of what is doubt? What would you say?
Not confident.
All right. I like that. So maybe doubt manifests in a way that just not really confidence. Like, how can I really know? Maybe you felt this way. How do I really know that when I die I'm going to go to heaven? Look, I know what the Bible says about the plan of salvation, the kids sing. I know about what we need to do, live faithful. I'm trying to do what's right, but I'm kind of afraid to die. I'm afraid that if I were standing in front of God, I don't know if I would be in heaven. You ever felt that way? I'd like confidence. For me, in that area.
Can I go back to like lack of faith and belief? I know it sounds harsh, but one I think is a lot of people find themselves in, especially even like heroes of the Bible. I think they doubt, and it kind of looks like they're at times of not believing, trusting. Faith is weak.
All right. And in those moments, you write about those case studies, and we'll talk about some, as you can see on the handout if we get to all of it. But the idea of those case studies, you got individuals that you look at their life and maybe they question. Maybe they go the opposite direction of God, and march out on their own, like, I'll figure all this out, and then they run the opposite side of God. But then their trajectory changes and they go back toward God. What can you learn from that path? Is there things they had to change? Are there things they had to do? Yeah, absolutely. So those case studies are going to be important, but I do think about the lack of confidence and knowing that you know that you know. We should know that we have eternal life. We know the gospel accounts were written with that in mind, right? John tells us, I wrote these things so you may believe that Jesus is the Christ. And it's not just intellectual knowledge. Belief in this sense is trusting. John once again says in 1 John chapter 5, 13 and 14, he says, all right, these things that you may believe and know that you have eternal life. So the Bible tells us we're supposed to know, but when we lack confidence, what do we do? If you're to distill these thoughts down into maybe a potential definition for doubt, I think it comes down to this: a lack of certainty regarding Christian teachings or one's personal relationship with them. So I'm going to use this as a definition. Some of the material that I'm using tonight comes from a very helpful book for me. And as I say this, you got to chew up the fish and spit out the bones in this. But it's a book on strictly on doubt, and I can send you the link to it because it's a PDF online on the author's website. But it's dealing with doubt, and this is his definition of doubt. And there's two components of it, right? A lack of certainty regarding Christian teachings. Do I really know what the Bible says? Do I really know what's required when it comes to worship or Christian living or salvation or whatever those things is, and then our relationship with them. I think most of the time when we face doubt, it's not necessarily about head knowledge, it's about heart knowledge. So I guess if that's okay to say. So a lack of certainty regarding Christian teachings, that may be the case, but I just don't know. You got all these different religions, you got all these different groups of Christians, all these different churches, people are teaching different things. How can I know what is true? How can I know what is right? Maybe I just scrap the whole thing and forget about it, I just don't want to follow anything. Or it might be the relational component to it, which is where I have seen things that I've struggled in, as I said in passing. So let me ask you this then. Is having doubt, so think from a Christian perspective, you have faced doubt, maybe you're going through doubt right now. Is it sinful to doubt? Give me your thoughts. Is it sinful to doubt?
I would say from my personal experience, no, because when I doubted, it seemed that doubt brought me closer because I started looking for answers, and those answers always came back to God.
Okay. All right. So doubt led you down a path of understanding. Okay. Getting to some answers. I like that. What else would you say?
I think another thing too is it's human nature, and just as you briefly said earlier about it's like a conversation with your father. You're not continuously asking questions or even a relationship there. So I think it could be considered simple, but
Okay.
So kind of see
It from this, and y'all jump in if you have something else you want to add to it. But it has potential to get us moving. When we've got doubts, it makes us do something, right? What else would you say, Ken?
I would say I view doubt in the same way that we do emotions, in that like having emotions, like each emotion isn't inherently wrong or bad. Like anger, for example, isn't in and of itself bad. It's the way that you implement it, like what you do with it.
Okay.
So I don't think that doubt is inherently sinful, but I think that if doubt is viewed the wrong way, if you don't embrace it, or if you implement it the wrong way, then it can lead you to sin.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Not addressing it and handling it correctly. I think you're right on board on what y'all are saying as well. Which is why I'm going to call this doubt detour. All right. So looking at your map, the last part that we have is you're supposed to go from the open country, and you're making your path all the way down. So you're having a conversation. At the very end, you want to be in the parking lot, right? You want to be in the Christian faith. You want to arrive at your destination. But there are times, maybe it's a pothole. And I think most of the time our doubts manifest in at least one of those potholes, or maybe a version of them, or something along the lines. And the reason why I'm calling it a detour is because maybe you need to go back through, maybe you got to reroute somewhere else, and give you a way to go through it. But if you see those three blanks in the doubt detour, I've got three what I'm going to call species of doubt, types of doubt that I want to make you aware of, and some solutions to work through them. All right. That's what's going to go in there. Now, about to change the slide. There's three things on here. They don't go in there. Okay. So there's a lot of threes, but this is not going to go into that sign yet. But I want you to have this stored away in your mind, kind of this response to: is it sinful to doubt? There are some misconceptions about doubt. Once again, this does not go in your sign yet. It's going to be on the next slide. There are misconceptions about doubt. One of them is you may have this feeling of doubt is uncommon. So if I'm dealing with doubt, it seems like all these Christians got everything all put together. They got it all figured out. They come to church, they're happy, seem so trusting when they sing that they know their Bible, and they're able to just talk about these things, and they're talking about with anybody, and they seem so confident. And I feel so dejected, and I feel so far away from God. It's got to be uncommon. Like I'm an anomaly. Have you ever felt that when you doubted God, that you're the only one that ever felt that, and then you felt bad for doing it? Yeah, I think that's the first misconception, and it's not true. If you don't mind sharing, I went first, and I'll tell you is, have you ever doubted God or doubted His word in something, or your relationship? Have you ever doubted? Okay, all right, yeah. So it's not uncommon. We got examples here. I had a lot of head nods. All right, I'll raise my hand and tell you that I did that as well. So maybe the first thing, misconception number one is doubt is uncommon. It's not. It's very common among Christians. The next part of this, some people may think you should have no doubt. Now, think about this for a second. We know that it seems to be a common thing. I want to live in such a way where I have no doubt. Bear with me on this one. Tell me what you think. Do you think it's possible as a Christian to live where you never have doubts? Okay, why do you say that? Human nature. All right. Key question. What do you mean by that? How does human nature impact? Human nature. Why is human nature a part of this?
Because we are known for, I guess it can be considered redundant in a way, and we're always trying to push something, and I guess it boils down to we don't think the same as God. These ways are not our ways, His thoughts are not our thoughts, and so why would we understand everything that He says?
I think it's a really good point. You understand. You're talking about human nature. Here's the reality. We're finite. God is infinite. I'm not going to understand and know everything. Here we go. If I had all knowledge, what would I be? God. I'm not, and neither are you. Aren't you think? Right. Because that would be a lot of responsibility on us. We don't have all knowledge, and when we don't have all knowledge, we start maybe the certainty part of it. We start questioning things, and if you don't know something, maybe you don't trust it. But then again, you understand in human relationships. You understand you're going through education. This is a college class, so I know that you guys have dabbled in classes periodically. Maybe haven't been attending recently, but maybe you'd like to return again next week. But if you think about it, if like your teacher doesn't know everything, they're experts in their field. They've done a lot of research, but they don't have all knowledge in those particular topics. So your math teacher, as much as you already talked about your math, acknowledge that. It's in front of everybody, so I can say it again. Yeah, that's right. But it's like how much more is out there in the world when it comes to mathematics? All right. I don't even want to get into all the different terms. Okay, Brady, you can back me up on this if you need to. But it's like you know there's a lot more out there. But just because you don't understand trigonometry, there's one word I came up with. All right, you don't understand it. You say fine, math doesn't exist. You know, because I don't understand trigonometry. Math doesn't exist. I'm not going to do any math ever again. No. Do what?
I want it to be like that.
Yeah, but how am I supposed to calculate how many pieces of pizza I'm going to eat tonight? That requires math. So you can't rule it out. Okay. But that's the thing with like God is that we may doubt because we don't have all the knowledge. But just because we miss something doesn't mean we get to throw everything out, right? And you're talking about just the vibes that go with it. Some people are just like, I'm just gonna have I just got the feeling that that God is there. Having any intellectual attachment at all. He's He's got to be there. But faith, remember, is belief in motion, but it's built on evidence. It's built on facts and truth. And that's something you can take to the bank and rely on. So I think misconception number 2 is to say that doubt is absent in faithful Christians. It does manifest sometimes. And it shows up, and sometimes it just rears its ugly head, and it's there. Once we talk about these species, I think you'll realize it. And the third one is doubt is wrong. And I already mentioned that. There's too many examples in the Bible of people that question things, maybe lack certainty about something, and they still just went on with it. Now there are others that have a lot of confidence. I'm like, how did you get that right? But then there's others where it's like they go from being in the dirt to being on the dirt, and that's just life. That's human nature, right? That's us being finite. That's part of it. All right. So with all that being said, let me distill down what doubt is into three different types of doubt. Species of doubt, the way that it manifests, and each one of them is going to require some response. Okay. Here's what I mean. So this is going to go in that last sign, the last blank in your roadmap. Although we quickly went through some things, probably have some other blanks. But three different types of doubt that you will face or have faced, and I believe in having categories. And if you can name something, then you can address it a little better, and you can put it in its right parameters. There's factual doubt. There's emotional doubt, and there's volitional doubt. Fancy word for you. I saw you grant about the word volitional. Do what?
Volatile, that's probably right.
Okay, we'll see. Okay. So make sure it is volitional. All right. Let's go with the word willful. All right. And so it could be volatile. Anyway, we're working on this. All right. Factual, emotional, and volitional. All right. I'm gonna give you each one of these. I'm gonna give you how you address it. The definition of it. Expand it a little bit, and then how you work through it. Okay. All right. Here's the first one. Let's talk about factual doubt. Factual doubt comes in the form of this is truly head knowledge. What we've done in practical apologetics, for the most part in this class on Wednesday nights, I've given you a lot of facts. Maybe somebody needs a fact. What that looks like is like, all right. I don't believe the historical Jesus really exists. Somebody said, well, let me give you some facts about that. Okay. You got your Roman sources, your Jewish sources, you got your literary sources, you got your archaeological sources. Okay. I've given you facts, and your factual doubt is satisfied with facts. Does that make sense? You may have had factual doubt at one point. I think most of the time when somebody goes through doubt, we just automatically assume they need more Apologetics Press articles. They need a little more, Wayne Jackson, Christian Courier articles. You never read some of those. Those are good as well. They need another book. They need another sermon. That may be the case, but just because somebody is facing doubt doesn't mean that they need another piece of evidence, another fact. Does that make sense? But if you are falling into this category and you need some information, how can I really trust that the Bible with all these different variants and all these different manuscripts, how can I really know I've got the one? Okay, well that's a fact. Okay, I can give you facts on that. The solution, right? So as you're going through each one of these, there's ways that you address factual doubts. One, you need to learn the facts, okay? Don't bury your head in the sand. It's just like, I'm not going to think about it, you know? Study, learn, find the Roman sources, come up with the dumb little house that you go through and talk about tiny planning. We're never going to forget tiny planning. He's a part of this class. That's learning a fact. You got a fact. So when somebody says there is no outside sources other than the Bible that say that Jesus lived in the first century. Well, let's go toe to toe. I got something for you. Okay. But you also, and this is what I've been trying to accomplish in this class. You need to defend the facts. All right. So go back. We're going math theme. I'm going to pick on Brady instead of you, Charlie. When it comes to learning a new math formula. Okay. Your teacher can teach a formula one time. Yeah, that makes sense. I see the formula. But for you to really get it in your head, what are you going to need to do? Practice. Over and over again. To the point where if you can defend it, where you can stand in front of the board and you can walk somebody through it, you know you've got it nailed down, right? So as you guys are getting ready for all your final exams, not just math classes, there's some other final exams that are going to happen. Your teacher's going to challenge you. What did you learn this semester? It might be a comprehensive exam. It might have been over just a particular unit. They're going to say, can you defend? By filling out this, this scantron, or filling out this essay, can you defend what you learned? There's a lot of facts. And if you can defend them, and you're good, right? But then you get to the other level of this. And I think this is what Peter talks about in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. In your hearts regard Christ the Lord as holy. Knowing something is a lot different than believing it. Okay. The kids, or my family's been really fascinated recently with the Artemis 2 lunar. It wasn't a landing, but as they went around the moon. That's been so fascinating. And you know all the science that goes into that whole process. And as they're calculating, what's it going to take for us to leave Earth through the atmosphere to go around the moon and come back? There's a lot of formulations. There's a lot of calculations that need to be done. You can fill it out all on a board. Okay. It's another thing to jump on the ship and say, let's go. I trust all the calculations that they're right. You believe and you do something about it. It's one thing for you to say, the little illustrations, like the tightrope walker, who had the rope over a big canyon, and he's walking back and forth, and he gets a wheelbarrow, and he puts rocks in there, and he asks everybody, who believes that can go across the rope? And it's like, yeah, so he takes the wheelbarrow, and he comes across the rope, and he says, all right, who can believe that? Who believes that I can walk across with somebody in the wheelbarrow? And I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, who wants to go in? And nobody gets in, right? There's that kind of illustration. That's how we are with Christianity. We can know all the facts. We can talk about how important it is. But you do something with it. You can defend it. I know people who defend the plan of salvation and how we're supposed to worship and what the Bible says, and then they don't go to church. Can make their plans and their intentions to go do that. Do you really believe it? Because you believe you're going to act on it. Okay. So I think that's a solution when you face factual doubt. You need to learn. You got to be able to defend, and you got to believe it. You got to commit to it. We use the word commitment. All right. I think this one. I'm going in order in this way. This one is what we feel the most and experience the most. Yes, it's emotional. So you are going to feel it. Emotional doubt. There are times in my life where I have factual doubt. So for me, it's like how do I work through God's commands to the Jericho, the Canaanite genocide, that kind of thing. I've had to work through that, and I needed some facts to work through it. But the illustration I told you when I doubted God being my father, that was a very emotional thing. I didn't need somebody else to open up the Bible and say, see this right here, look at Jesus praying here in Matthew chapter 6, says, Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. See, we can call him Father, and Jesus tells us to do that because Jesus is God's Son, and we are heirs according to the promise with Jesus, and we're part of the kingdom of light along with Jesus. And all right, that's all facts. Great, I can tell you the verses too. But it hurts. You will identify emotional doubt by it hurting. I always think it's interesting with Christianity, what I call the fourth dimension. Is any other situation in life, you come across three different dimensions that it interacts with. So think about you being stressed, or you thinking about a job change or something like that. Just going through work. Three dimensions you come across. You have physical. You have physical exhaustion and things that's going to tax. You've got emotional, just the feelings that go along with it, and the intellect that goes with it as well. So heart, head, and action. What Christianity offers is the fourth dimension, which is spiritual. If you're not right spiritually, it can make you physically sick. Have you ever been physically sick because you were not spiritually okay with God? I have. I've been so off with my relationship with God. I was generating bleeding ulcers in my stomach. Okay. In others, if you've ever had that kind of effect because of stress and things, and it's that fourth dimension when things aren't jiving the correct way, it'll impact you physically, emotionally, and intellectually. Right? You ever been so like just overcome with like your relationship with God is just off, man. You sinned. You did something pretty significant. You feel like you just not in the right terms. Whatever it is, the spiritual, when it is misaligned, it can mess up your emotional state, your intellectual state, and your physical state. Emotional doubt hurts. If you ever tell somebody, I'm doubting God right now, and my stomach hurts, heart's just like beating out of my chest. I can't sleep, can't eat. You probably have emotional doubt. And emotional doubt is it's hard to identify, to really nail it down. But I think there's some telltale signs of it. Like I said, it hurts. It's usually going to be tied to something else. So what we need to do as we work through this, number one, you got to identify, locate the lie. Usually we tell ourselves some kind of lie. So God doesn't love me. God's not there for me. The church hates me. The church is full of hypocrites. All of those. Those are all statements, right? That we're making that look like facts. The church hates me. God hates me. That's not a fact, though. That's an emotional thing that you're feeling, and it's a lie. The greatest deceiver is Satan, and he tells us all kinds of lies. Go to Genesis chapter 3, you find the first lie that's in there. That's his tactic, and it hurts. But if you can locate the lie, then you can tell yourself the truth, because the key to these things are truth. Truth in the form of fact, or truth in the form of recognizing reality and the correct way to handle emotions, like Kim was saying. Then you follow the biblical pattern. There's a biblical pattern through all of these things. That you take. I think about this in Paul's letter to the Corinthians. He says, "You take every thought captive to obey Christ." Those thoughts that arise in our mind, you're thinking, "Where did that come from? I've never thought that about God before. What would mom think if she heard me say that? If I actually vocalized that." There's a lie that's attached to what that's behind it, but then there's a biblical pattern. You take every thought captive to obey Christ, but then you supplement in joy. And there's multiple passages to go through. I think about Philippians chapter 4 verses 2 to 13 is a good key passage to show a biblical pattern for how to address things. And it starts with joy. Because lies bring in darkness, and they bring in the absence of everything that is good. So in that passage, you think about your reasonableness, you put it all before God, you give a request, and you find the peace that passes all understanding. You think about good things, you follow the teachings and the traditions, the case studies that we don't even get to, of all of these things. And then whether you're brought up or you're brought down, you can do all things in Christ who strengthens you. Okay, that's a biblical pattern to address the emotions. But then you actually have to address the issue. For me, I had to get to the core of needing to hear, or thinking I need to hear this from God. But really it was, I hated my father, and I was happy he was in the grave, and I needed to fix that. That was a lot of hate in my heart, and that changed my whole view of everyone, including myself. So I forgave my dad, and that was the issue. I would have never pinpointed like the reason why I was struggling so much in my faith is because I hated my dad. I've forgiven, and I'm good with God. That's what changed my view of God. God is God, and He operates in His own realm, in His own way. It would be silly for me to think God needs to bend to my will, when my goal is to bend and submit to His. So you locate the lie, you follow the biblical pattern, you address the issue. That leads us to this third category, which we also are pretty active in ourselves, volitional, willful willful decisions that we make that look like doubt. Okay, and it's kind of like if you want to put a Venn diagram together. Sometimes these overlap. Volitional doubt is going to be when you stop growing and maturing and drawing closer to God. If it's a relational thing, you need to know Him more. You can know Him intellectually. You can know Him emotionally. But it requires action involved. You understand? So volitional, willful, something you got to do. Part of this is maybe you just need to submit to God. You might be so prideful, so up on yourself that you got everything figured out, and you wouldn't bend your knee to serve the Creator of heaven and earth. We sing songs about my stubborn will. Right. Yep. I understand that. So maybe you got to submit to God, and that might look like you making some changes in your life. Maybe you need to study your body. You need to pray some more. Maybe you need to spend some time with the church. Maybe you need to be generous. Maybe you plug in any Christian living in here, and that's the idea of practicing the faith. You plug in Christian living, and it will change your volitional attitude. Can you focus on heaven? All right. Is that there's more to this world than what we're experiencing. And if you can have an eye toward heaven, understand your citizenship is in heaven. Change your perspective on what's going on here. In one way, you can just kind of cast some stuff off and just roll down your back because look, we're only here for just a little blip. Right. We're just a mist. But on the other hand, what we do here matters where we're going to be eternally. Right. So we also can't just say, it doesn't matter what happens down here on this earth. I can just live up, do whatever I want to. That's not how that works at all. What we do in the flesh is going to impact, and we're going to be held accountable when we stand before the Creator of heaven and earth. So we better take life seriously. But we can't let it rule us. It's a balance. That's the idea with Christianity. It requires both of those. So you got to practice the faith. One of the other things I forgot to say about emotional doubt, and I think it impacts this as well. Sometimes we just do dumb things that put us in a dark hole. I see doubt manifest in different ways. When have you ever felt like you've been more doubtful when you haven't been sleeping really well? I know we joke a lot about jamboree and stuff. But have you felt through the past couple of weeks where you're really into those late nights and stuff? Did you feel just out of curiosity, you don't have to respond right now, but just think about it. Did you feel more distant from God when you weren't sleeping well? You weren't eating normally? You were off track with your normal patterns of life? Just out of curiosity, I want to reflect. In the past couple of weeks, did you see doubt manifest, and you just thought, where did that come from? I've never experienced that before. And I'm wondering if there might have been some decisions you had been making in life that stopped you from thinking more clearly. Something for you to consider. All right. Did you think through this? I know we're done. But the case studies, just to throw up the names for you, because I think you know them well. But Abraham went through these kind of patterns, and I would like for you to read these stories again in your personal study and identify what form of doubt manifest at what time in their life. Abraham has a few of them. So does Job. Isaiah works through that, and Jeremiah. Really good case studies. Turn that into a personal study. Find where doubt manifests, and find the solution that was given to them, or that they had to experience themselves. And I think you'll figure out a solution. So appreciate you guys. Thanks for joining me in this study this semester. If I can help you in any way.